Hey everybody, Alan Krashesky here, anchor for ABC7 in Chicago, and I'm with Ross Weidner, our producer here in Rome. Two actually of our three-member crew that we've got here from ABC7 in Chicago. The other one would be Derek Robinson, who's our photographer. He's busy getting ready to set up our next live shot here that we're going to be doing for Chicago shortly.
We've been doing live shots all day for stations all over the country.
We have been. Of course, there's a lot of interest in this summit here in Rome, specifically in Vatican City behind us here. It's, of course, historic. There's never been a case previously where a pope has called all the leading bishops from around the world who represent the various bishops' conferences. These are essentially, I guess you'd almost call them the governors of the different bishops' groups from countries all over the place. The United States, of course, has the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and other countries have similar bishops' organizations. So what the Pope did is he said, I want the leaders of each one of those groups. In addition to those groups, I also want the heads of what we call the religious orders. Jesuits, for instance, would be a religious order. I want them to come here as well to Rome, and we're going to discuss the sexual abuse crisis in the church, and also how we can possibly come up with some solutions to this.
You said there were like 200 people in that group?
Yeah, there's nearly 200 who have gathered here as the congregation, so to speak. 190, I think, is the accurate number. But they've all gathered here, and they've been going through. What they do is in this. It's a 4-day meeting. The fourth day is actually a mass that they'll be having. Most of the working part of this group is going to take place during 3 days, and we're in day 1 here. Of course, so you've got Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that are really the 3 days of the meeting.
Maybe we should sort of go through what our day looks like. I mean, it's an unusual kind of day. When do we actually start this day?
Actually, you could almost say that for us, from a repertorial standpoint, that our days never end. They kind of run into each other. You can appreciate why that might be, just because we're 7 hours ahead of Chicago in terms of the work that we're doing live for Chicago anyway. So we'll give you an example. We'll just say that we wake up early in the morning. We're covering all the events that are going on during the day here at the Vatican behind us, recording interviews, for instance, and getting the pictures that we need to put our stories together. But then we're doing live shots for Chicago, for instance. Our 4 o'clock news in the afternoon, well, that would be 11 p.m. local time here in Rome. 5 o'clock news, likewise, then would be midnight. The 6 o'clock news would be 1 o'clock in the morning, and then our 10 o'clock newscast is very early in the morning. That's at 5 a.m. And then you begin again the process of covering the news of the day as you get around to 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right. So we actually started this day at 5 o'clock Rome time. 5 o'clock. a.m. Rome time.
Yeah, here it's Thursday.
On Thursday, the first day of the summit,
right,
which was kind of nice. It was the first 10 o'clock live shot, but it was the first day of the summit.
Exactly.
So
the first day of the summit at 5 o'clock in the morning Rome time was actually 10 o'clock in the evening the previous day. I hope that makes sense to you. 10 o'clock in the evening on Wednesday, 5 o'clock in the morning Thursday here in Rome. But it's really quite a gift that we have here to bring these major news events to you live as they're happening. Because you can really get caught up instantly in what's going on here, and we can keep on top of things. Each one of these days, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, as I mentioned, are the key meeting days. And what they've done, the organizers of this, and I should mention that Cardinal Supich, the Archbishop of Chicago, is one of the 4 major organizers of putting this whole thing together under the direction of Pope Francis. But each day has a theme, and responsibility, for instance, of the bishops is the theme that they're dealing with on Thursday, and then on Friday it'll be accountability. When we get to Saturday, it's transparency. And those are the 3 themes they have for this.
One thing that stuck out to both of us today was the seating. That's something that really kind of surprised us, I guess. Cardinal Supich, we knew he had a big role here today, but where he ended up was a little bit of a surprise.
Yeah, I think it was a surprise to him, actually, because he was saying that, and he jokes about it a little bit, he's never one who really wants to bring attention to himself, even if he's in a very important role, such as the one he has here in Rome for this particular summit. He jokes about it a little bit and says, well, the only reason he needed a place to sit, and it just happened to be next to Pope Francis. But he also said that there are 4 members of that committee, as I mentioned. There are 2 of them that happen to be presidents of their particular bishops' conferences, so they were seated in the auditorium, so to speak. And then, of course, Cardinal Supich was next to Pope Francis. But he really has been a significant person in terms of pulling this together, obviously in close communication with Pope Francis, in deciding what should be covered in the summit, and beyond that, not only what should be covered, but there is a goal here. Not that the Pope is steering it solely in one direction. It's very collegial in its approach in wanting to hear from the bishops and what they're thinking too, but they have a direction that they'd like to head to.
Well, and what was interesting about this too is really the live aspect of some of the elements here. I mean, often when we see live Vatican productions, it's for a big celebration,
right.
a big event. News events
right.
like this, they generally have a press conference, and it's very written statements.
But closed generally. I mean,
yeah.
for a meeting such as this, the doors would be closed. We'd hear about it later. They would have a news conference talking about maybe what had been discussed, the highlights, for instance. But what's rare this time around is that they have decided not to put it out in its entirety, but portions of it anyway, are being put out and streamed online and also put out by Vatican TV, and we're able to capture that and bring that to you, the sections that they allow us to see. Some of the areas that we're not seeing, for instance, are what they call their working groups, where they gather after somebody's given a presentation, and there are discussions about perhaps what they should do or not do. There may be questions that are posed, perhaps questions from the bishops as to, well, how would that work? You propose something, but we don't see how that would necessarily play out in a productive way. So those things we don't see, but we've seen quite a bit of it.
Well, and also the presentations today, 2 of them were in English, which was nice
right.
as well.
Yes.
We're used to Italian presentations here, and then you got to wait for a translation.
That is very true in the past, and of course, as you can imagine, if you're a bishop and you come to Rome frequently, you do speak Italian. You learn it as a matter of doing the role that you have. But it is nice, at least for us anyway, who are English speaking, to be able to have English speaking presenters and to hear things discussed in our native language anyway, so that we can communicate it easily to you.
Was there something that stood out to you today? Was it some part of the speech or something that was unusual to you?
There were a number. There were actually 3 presenters today. We were able to spend a good deal of time in our reporting in dealing with 2 of them in particular. There was the Archbishop of Manila, that's Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle. And he referred, and he was doing so in religious terms. He's a bishop, so that's not surprising. But what he was doing was equating, for instance, the story of Thomas. Many of you know the story of Thomas, the doubting apostle who didn't believe that Jesus had been resurrected until he could put his hands in the holes in Jesus' hands, so the risen Jesus Christ, and also in his side. And what he was saying was these wounds, in that religious sense, are then he related that to the wounds within the church itself, and the wounds particularly that abuse survivors have suffered for years. And he actually became quite emotional at times.
That was incredible.
He did not have, he did not have tears coming down his face, but you could tell that he was overcome in talking about the just the wound in the church, and specifically on individuals that child sexual abuse had caused for those who are survivors of it, and what the church's response should be to that. And there was another archbishop too.
Yeah, from Malta.
Yeah, from Malta.
His statement was pretty strong.
He was incredible. He was very strong and very persuasive. He actually said in so many words, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit. He says, "Whatever comes out of this summit, I really want the world to know that we mean business. When we're sitting down here, we mean business, and we're not just going to sit around and talk amongst ourselves, but we actually intend to come up with protocols that we can put into action."
Well, and so meaning business was an important moment here, because the Pope also talked about concrete action coming out of here. Leading up to this summit, there were some questions, particularly because on the papal plane he appeared to downplay what actually might be accomplished.
Yeah, you're talking about his conversation you had, I believe, coming back from Latin America.
Yeah, Panama.
And a reporter asked him, about what his expectations were for this particular summit, and he responded in so many words with saying that he didn't want to lift expectations too high, or people might be disappointed. And you know what? He may be right. I mean, the fact of the matter is, no matter what is decided back here in terms of the outcome of this particular summit, there's undoubtedly somebody, especially an abuse survivor, who may feel that they didn't go far enough. They should have done something more, whatever that particular thing might be that they wanted to occur. So he may be right about that. But what's different in this case, and what is really significant, is that they truly are talking about the protocols in a global way. And that's important to mention too. We've been dealing with this issue in the American church for such a long time. You need to remember that this summit here is not just dealing with the United States, but worldwide. So what's been happening in the United States, and has been quite public, of course, because it's been made public and people talking about it, and discipline questions related to bishops. But in other countries around the world, these same abuse issues may have been occurring, but they weren't necessarily brought out into the open and talked about publicly.
Well, I think that's all we're going to do for today.
Yeah.
I hope you appreciated our first YouTube live broadcast here from Rome. We're still trying to figure it out, trying to figure out the angle, the lighting. We're working on all that.
But you know what? Yeah, so bear with us on that. But at the same time, we appreciate your interest too. It's an important topic, whether you're Catholic or not. It's an important topic in our world, and we hope that in some way we're able to shed a little bit of light on what's going on here, and you'll get an opportunity to learn more as a result.
All right, well, we'll join you again soon.
That's right. And we'll see you on ABC 7 and on our website and our news app too.
Yep.